What's going on, YouTube? We're getting ready to start a special discussion, a special episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show. We're discussing the massacre in Charleston, South Carolina. And so hold tight as we get ready to start this broadcast. Testing 1, 2.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Charleston, South Carolina, at the historic Emmanuel AME Church. 9 people are dead, and the assailant has now been captured. His name is Dylan Roof. I'm pronouncing it. Don't care if I'm pronouncing it correctly or not. And his motivations were clear. Even though it seems to be somehow ambiguous to the likes of Fox News. His motivations were clear to him. One of the witnesses, one of the survivors, not just a witness, but one of the survivors, stated that that he was saying during the shooting, while he was killing people, he stated that you've raped our women, and you're taking over our country, and you have to go. And so I'm just having this special broadcast this afternoon. Normally our show is on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I wanted to give you, the listener, a chance to call in. We're broadcasting live through our partners, and we also have a live hangout going on YouTube, and you can participate. Any of you can participate. 857-600-0518 is a call in. I want to give people a chance to voice their opinions and their concerns, and just express their emotions. Now's not a time for us to dictate to people. Al Sharpton is dictating how we should behave or how we should feel. And this is not the time. It's a time for people to feel however it is that they feel. Their feelings are legitimate and need to have time to have feelings. Instead of us trying to tell and dictate people, to stay calm and to let's pray and all these types of things. All those things are good, but let's not move past the grief, the sorrow, and the anger. I'll be joined later on in this brief episode by April Rain. Always my go-to person, wonderful analyst and attorney, social media activist and consultant. She'll be joining me around 2:30. So we'll have the episode going then. But in the meantime, just one of the most disturbing things about this, besides the fact of the atrocity itself, is the glaring differences in how crimes, terrorism, massacres like this are treated. They're already alluding to, and you know what? To a certain extent, I'm last night when this news broke, I personally, I like to give an event just a few moments before I draw my own conclusion, because I like to information gather. I like to get information. But on the surface, last night, it looked exactly how it turned out to be. It turned out to be a white supremacist, angry about Black people in America, taking his anger out on people at worship. And then the nerve of this guy to sit and worship for an entire hour before he began his massacre. So much going on, so many people feeling outraged, and rightfully so. But the most disturbing thing about this, besides the tragedy itself, is the deflection, trying to make this about something that it's not. And that is happening all over the news media right now. All right. I want you to join the conversation, whether you're listening via radio or you're listening via YouTube or you're listening through other social media outlets, 857-600-0518. So Fox News put on a black pastor this morning, and this really ticked me the hell off. Fox News put on a black pastor, and he was there to say the things that Fox News could not say. He got on this morning and tried to make this about a hate crime against Christianity. Problem with that, Pastor, is that most white supremacist groups are Christian. Look at the founding of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist terrorist group. It was a Christian organization built and founded in the Christian church. And so for them to try to deflect and make this not about racism, nothing is ever about racism, but everything is about Christian persecution. Listen, I'm a Christian, and you guys are full of you guys are full of it. You're full of it because it is clear this guy was a white supremacist, and they knew this information, but still they went and found some good old pastor who just wanted to be on TV so that he can have his 15 minutes of fame. And he decides to say that this was not about race. Don't jump to conclusions on race. No, it could not possibly be about race. It was about attack on Christian values. But you have to understand, for some Christians, this was a value. For white supremacist groups that are Christian, this is exactly what they want. So this was not an attack on Christianity. That was disingenuous at best, propagandistic, which is really what it was. It was just propaganda to try to deflect from the very real situation that happened that was based solely on race. This guy was a terrorist. Nobody is calling him a terrorist. They're saying he's mentally deranged. Nobody is saying call him a thug. They're calling him a clean cut, a clean shaven was a description young man. No one is saying that he was a no one is saying that this is they don't even want to concede that this is a hate crime. Very few outlets. There's, the mainstream media. You have clear divisions in the mainstream media, but you have an entire side that does not want to admit that this was a hate crime. And that's what's so troubling about this, is that in the face of this massacre, in the face of something that is glaringly obvious, they have no conscience whatsoever, and they're willing to spin this to be about Christian persecution. And this doesn't surprise me. I'm not shocked by this. I'm just disgusted by it. I'm disgusted by it because they have no moral conscience. They have no morality. They have nothing. They pretend to be Christian. They pretend to be moral people. They pretend to be patriots, but they have no moral conscience, no center whatsoever. For you to be able to look in the face of racist white supremacist terrorism and say, no, this was about Christian persecution. That shows you exactly the mindset of the people that we're dealing with. And these are some of the same people, mind you, some of the same exact people who created the concept, and not even created it, but they exasperate the concept of black thugs. Of race baiters. This pastor that was killed, nine people, and the pastor was one of them. He was an outstanding activist. He was an elected official. He was a leader in the community. And I guarantee you that if we go through the role of all of the talk radio shows and the local shows there in Charleston, North Carolina, South Carolina, I guarantee you that somebody identified him as a race baiter. Somebody identified him as the problem. And when you have someone that is so full of racist hatred, and they are being provoked, and they're being stoked, and they're being motivated by organizations that are just doing this for fun. I mean, Fox News, they do this for fun. They do this because they know it's going to get their viewers off. They know that's exactly what their viewers want to hear. They want to hear black people referred to as thugs. They want to hear this type of thing. And when you have people who are so full of hatred, and then they have not only the opportunity, but they have the weaponry to do something like this, what else do you expect? What else do you expect but for somebody who's so full of hatred to do something like this? And then to turn around and say, oh, this was not about race, even though the guy clearly stated this was about race. So that's my question. It's like, how are they going to spin their way out of this? How are they going to dig themselves out of this without recognizing the powerful hand of white supremacy that is left in the United States? And I don't apologize for identifying it for what it is. I gave them enough time last night. And I said, okay, well, we're going to wait an hour. We're just going to get just enough information so that we can see what's actually going on. And sure enough, just like we all suspected, 21-year-old white guy walks into a church building driven and fueled by hatred for blackness and kills 9 people as they worshiped, as they came to an end of. And here's the thing. Here's the most troubling thing about this. The most troubling thing about this is the fact that they have attacked the one group of people that intentionally did all they could to be nonviolent. The Black church, the African American church, is just about the only group of people left in this conversation about race that insist on being nonviolent. And where did they go? They went to attack that group of people. Really, that's the most disturbing thing about this. Actually, and I keep saying that there's so many disturbing things about this that, that you have to take it all. You have to look at it all piece by piece, but they have attacked. There are plenty of African Americans who feel like we should go get our guns. And do you blame them? Do you blame them for feeling as outraged as they are? Do you blame them for feeling like we need to go get weaponry and protect ourselves and protect our churches and protect our families? Do you blame them for feeling like that? I can't blame them. I can't blame them for feeling like that. I can't negate that feeling. I can't negate that that urge to protect themselves with weapons, but they attacked. That's the thing. They attacked the last group of people that that intentionally and purposefully were nonviolent. And so for all intents and purposes, they have militarized, they have radicalized the last group of people, because I can't imagine too many. Of course, Al Sharpton did, but I can imagine too many people going around saying that that we should be completely nonviolent and just pray kumbaya our way through this. All right, folks, I've been joined by April Rain. April, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. I wish it was under better circumstances. How are you today?
I am weary and tired, but I am thankful to be here.
Absolutely. And I completely understand. We'll be joined in a few more minutes by several other people, but I just wanted to get started with you. And actually, I started a little bit early because I wanted a chance to just get some things off of my chest. And so before I just start barraging you with questions, giving you a barrage of questions, rather, I wanted you to just say what's on your mind and what you are feeling and what are your thoughts about this?
I'm just tired, and I don't have really appropriate words for today. I need people to value the lives of people of color, and I need us to stop dying at the hands of domestic terrorists.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. Domestic terrorism. That's I mean, and here's the thing that I tweeted out. People are so afraid. The media, they are so afraid of the new Black Panther Party. They were so afraid of the original Black Panther Party. But they're in general, they're afraid of Black militancy. But realistically, when have you seen any Black militant do something that we see happening from white supremacist militant groups all the time? Timothy McVeigh. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed at the hands of white supremacist groups. So why are they afraid of Black supremacy? Are they afraid that because maybe we should respond in kind and they're surprised that we haven't? Or is it just a means of playing a political game of silencing Black anger?
I think that's exactly what it is. And I think it's a continuation of white supremacy, and a continuation of paternalism, such that the white people who are afraid really are afraid of our Blackness, right? They're afraid of us becoming equal citizens in every sense of the word. And so that's what it is. Not only do we see that with respect to domestic terrorists like this gentleman whose name I will not mention, but we also see that with respect to the media and how he is being portrayed already. Today already we've seen when it's a Black victim, though that person is criminalized in the media, and we want to know exactly what he or she did to deserve the violence that was placed upon them. But when it's a white criminal, or a thug, as the word should properly be used, it is an attempt to understand what went wrong and how society failed this troubled individual such that he felt the need to take things in his own hands. And it's an attempt to humanize him, whereas we don't humanize the Black victims. So what have we heard other than State Senator Pinckney? What have we heard about the other victims of this tragedy? We don't know names, we don't know anything, but we know, all about this young man who apparently was wearing a flag of apartheid South Africa on his jacket. He had a Confederate flag on his license plate, and his very words indicate that he was a racist. That's not me, that's him saying, you all have done terrible things to our country, and so I'm going to kill you. I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically the gist of what he said. So it's not a question of why did he do this? He did this because he was a racist, and let's call it what it is.
Absolutely. And that's what, there's so many things, and I keep saying this, there's so many things that are just damn frustrating about it. But the fact that the media is absolutely, without question, they are humanizing him instead of what they do to Black people, which is criminalizing us. And they don't criminalize us just when we have committed a crime. They criminalize us when we're the victim. So, when with Michael Brown, the very first thing they did, they didn't humanize the dead person. They criminalized them in order to protect this police officer. And so we just see it time and time again. And what's so frustrating is that no one even wants to admit that. No one even wants to recognize that that even happens. If you mention that, oh, you're just race baiting. But seriously, at this point, if you don't see it, it's simply because you don't want to see it.
That's exactly right. And I think we need to call it what it is. And this is one of the many reasons why I don't watch mainstream media at all anymore. And that's CNN, MSNBC, Fox, any of them, because they're really not doing truthful and accurate reporting all too often. So I actually get my news from social media because it's faster, it's more accurate, and then I can decide for myself how I want to frame the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the case. I mean, everyone is relentless at it. I think MSNBC tries to not do it, and then sometimes they go too far in the opposite direction. So it's just, you have to navigate your way through the world of the mainstream media. But to be honest with you, I'm right there with you. I just get my news. If I can't read it, I don't want it. And that's what I want to read, so I can dissect it without the intonation and the inflammatory words of people in media, because their job, ever since the profit motive was entered into media, to the news organizations, their job is to get ratings. And so they're going to intentionally do whatever it takes to get their audience. And unfortunately, there's an entire segment whose audience wants the vilification of African-American and Black people in general. And so that's what we see. And you're right. I mean, quite frankly, in all of the news feeds and in listening to, hell, even NPR, as neutral as NPR tries to be, I mean, they've barely given this story the proper time, that the proper due. No exposés into the life of this political and pastoral leader. Nothing into the life of the mother of 3 that was killed. Nothing. I'm having to glean all of this from social media. But as I'm in the car driving around the city, nothing in the news about the life of these people. But still, they're talking about the challenges of this guy who did the crime.
That's exactly right. And so at what point will we be hearing about his criminal record, the criminal record of his parents, as we so often hear when the victims are Black? You know, when will we hear about his other wrongdoings? Because my understanding is he does have a rap sheet. I don't know how long it is, but, you know, there is a mugshot out there of him. So when will we hear about all of his other wrongdoings, as we so often hear about Black victims? Right. You know, it wasn't too long ago when we were talking about that young gentleman, I think it was, who shot up the theater in Colorado, and how he, you know, what he likes to watch on TV. You know, well, who cares? You know, who cares? He is a killer. You know, he walked into a movie theater, if I'm thinking about the right young man, you know, and killed people. This gentleman in Charleston, South Carolina, walked into a church, sat with people in the middle of Bible study as they were talking about God's love and grace. You know, as they were praying, sat with them for over an hour, and then said the very racist things that he did, and shot as many people as he could, and reloaded, in fact, so that he could shoot more people, and then walked or ran away and, you know, attempted to evade law enforcement. Yeah. So it's awful. It's just pathetic.
That's so many facets to the story. And, you know, a lot of people get mad at me because I don't personally jump to race as an issue right away. My natural reflex is to look at the hand of the status quo. I look at the hands of politics. I look at the hand of media, and that's what I see first. And the very first thing I saw was the manner in which media was spinning this already. I mean, last night they started spinning it. This morning they were spinning it. They went as far as getting this Black pastor to come on Fox News to say that, you know, let's not jump to conclusions and say that this was a race issue. This was Christian persecution. You know, okay, hang on 1 second. I think I have the wrong window open here. Obviously, you guys can hear my Skype call coming through, and I need to get that cut off. But the spin, and that's what I see. Now, don't get me wrong. I obviously know the hypocrisy. I obviously know the racism that's involved in this. But you have to understand, racism and white supremacy has always been a tool to increase the wealth of people in power. It has always been a tool. And then they get people like this young guy, you know, this terrorist. Clearly he's a terrorist, but he's obviously just a tool of white supremacy. And white supremacy itself does not just hate people. White supremacy wants to extract wealth. White supremacy wants to maintain power politically and economically. So a lot of people got upset with me, you know, this morning on my pages and the different places in my circles. But that's just my job. My job is to see the other hand. I think racism, and then you could disagree with me on this one, or if you do or if you don't, just let me know what you feel. To me, racism isn't the final disease. You know what I mean? Racism is a disease, but it's just the real disease is white supremacy that wants to control, that wants power, economic power and political power. What do you think about that?
I think that's right. I think that, you know, racism is a symptom of white supremacy, but white supremacy is truly, you know, the biggest foe that we have to deal with. But it really doesn't matter what you call it, you know, we are still dying, and that's the bottom line. So whether you just want to call it bigotry or discrimination or racism or patriarchy or white supremacy or white privilege, the label doesn't matter when the results are the same, and that is that our people are dying far too often at the hands of violence, whether it's a domestic terrorist like this man in Charleston, South Carolina, or police brutality and police violence in Ferguson or New York or throughout the country. You know, the result is the same. So I don't get hung up on labels because, you know, you're fighting the same six-headed monster, you know, and all of the heads have to be slayed.
April, what I'm going to do here is, because I don't know if you guys hear the Skype call that's trying to come through, but it's driving me crazy and I can't find it here. So I'm going to take us to a quick break. And so I have so many computer screens open over here that I do not know exactly which one the Skype call is coming in. So we're going to take a quick break. And after this break, and let me make sure I play the right break. After this break, we'll come back and we're going to take these calls and get everyone else's voice in on it. All right. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be right back after this. And thanks so much for April Rain for joining us at the last second. Thank you so much for being here. And we will be back after this.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation. 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com. or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust. You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I'm having some kind of, I run a tight ship over here, and I run pretty much everything by myself. And I have a Skype call, or is that a Google Hangout call? There's a call coming in that is ringing through, and that just drives me, it just frustrates the hell out of me. So that means that at the end of the show, I'm going to break down every piece of equipment, every computer. I'm breaking it down so I can find it. It's going to drive me crazy. But until then, we're just going to have to put up with it. And that's just kind of the way it is. But I do have one caller on the line. Caller, what is your name and what is your comment?
Hi, it's Adrian. I got TJ with me.
Oh, wonderful. I have you on the line. Adrian, you call from a 601 number?
I'm from Philadelphia area.
Okay.
And I'm part of the Don't Get It Twisted crew.
Absolutely.
And some of the comments that we've been having, I've been tweeting a bit, is it's interesting they were able to take this mass murderer alive, but a kid with a toy gun got shot dead in 2 seconds.
You know what? We were commenting on that. It is unbelievable that, and I don't know why is it, April, and you guys please stay on the line. I want to keep talking with you, but April, why is it that they can take the guy in Aurora, Colorado into custody? They've taken this guy into custody without a gunshot being fired, but here's a 12-year-old Tamir Rice who's playing, and they roll up and execute him on the site. Why is that?
Because they're white. I mean, I'm sorry, but it really is that simple. The domestic terrorists that we're talking about, the mass murderers that we're talking about, have all been white, right? You pick which atrocity we're talking about in this country in the last 5 years, right. And that's the case. And so they were all taken alive and appears unharmed. We can go back to Texas, and that bar brawl with those, gang thugs, and all of them, they were in a shootout with police. And, I believe that all of those that were involved in the shootout were taken alive. Anyone that went to the hospital or that was killed were killed by the gang members, not by law enforcement. And, we saw them, on their phones texting or on social media or whatever they were doing, not in handcuffs at all. So that's the difference. And it's really that simple. And I think we need to call it out because that's the truth. These mass terrorists were taken alive because they're white. But victims, Black and people of color, victims of law enforcement are not taken alive or are severely injured because they're Black.
Absolutely. I mean, I you know what, you said it this morning when we were texting back and forth or tweeting back and forth, that you really, today is one of those days you don't have any time for signifying, that you just have to call it for what it is. And that's exactly what it is. Adrian, you're there with TJ, and you guys are with the Don't Get It Twisted crew on the WCHE 1520 AM in the Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania area. Is TJ on the line with you?
Hey, I'm here. Got you. There's a delay there. With technology down here, we're getting together. Yeah, but as Adrian was bringing up there's so many dynamics here. How in the world does a young man that has a toy gun, 3 seconds later, he's dead?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the entire thing that's so disturbing about it. And we see this, April and TJ and Adrian, we see this all of the time. We see it too often. But what makes me angry, what actually makes me angry, besides the reality of just the fact that we're getting killed, that's enough to make you angry. But what makes me furious is the denial to the simple reality that police have a certain level of fear or respect for white people with guns, because we see it all of the time. When they approach a open carry protester, they approach them with humility and respect. But when they approach a Black guy who's doing an open carry protest, or if they approach a Black guy, even if he's unarmed, there is no humility. There is no common respect. All there is they view us as animals, and then they treat us accordingly. And that, quite frankly, that's what ticks me off, is that people deny that reality. And that denial, to me, is a political move. That is a political jockeying to make sure that we never have the necessary conversations about race that would actually move us forward. April.
I think that's exactly right. And it's not just the humility and respect that they have, but it is a valuing of the lives of white people. And that's how the Black Lives Matter movement began, because we do not see, as the hands of law enforcement, that Black lives matter. That's the distinction, and we're talking about men in blue, regardless of their race. So even Black police officers don't always value the lives of Black people the way they do the lives of white people. So for example, the young man, and unfortunately there are so many names recently that I'm getting them confused, the young man who was shot and killed running away from the police officer in a park not too long ago, and then the police officer attempted to plant a gun or a taser on him, and the Black cop was standing there, making sure things were okay and that he was able to do it with impunity. That's an example of how, regardless of your race, once you put on that, once you're blue, once you put on that blue uniform, that you have a devaluation of Black lives as compared to white lives.
And TJ, while I have you guys, before I let you guys go, in your area, in your region, is this to us is something that we see across the nation. We see it across the nation. We see it everywhere. And I know you guys are here in the North, but there's not really necessarily any difference between the treatment that you would get. Some of the times you get a worse treatment here in the North. What is the climate like there in Philadelphia? I'm sorry, are you guys in Philadelphia or just outside of Philadelphia? But regardless, what is the climate?
We're in southern Chester County. In southern Chester County, you might as well say you're in the twilight zone. If you know about historically what transpired here, we're on the Maryland, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey area line in there. Coming through there, Rising Sun, Maryland. I don't know if that name brings up names, Prairieville, where you have supremacist groups like the KKK. They're very active. In this area, for instance, I myself, not those broke names, I ran for Democratic committee person, state committee person. Was the first African American, first Black to even be on the ballot in the history of the county.
Wow. And I'm imagining this is circa 2005 or something.
The parallel of that, when it comes about the positions and those that are standing up, how they squelch the empowerment here. Not to name parties in that sense, but I won't name the party, but it's not the Republican Party. So okay, well that other party, 404 committee seats, 47% of them are vacant. Yet there's only 17 minorities that were even in an elected position to do so. So when you talk about representation, and in that light, education basis, look at education. We want to talk about the pipelines, just like Michelle Alexander talks about from schools to prison. We want to talk about mass incarceration here within the county here. You build 5 prisons for not even a school, and the prisons that you're building have every one of the beds have already been filled before they're even built.
Wow. Let me ask you this. What year was that you ran and you were the very first in the entire county, very first African-American? What year was that?
Say that again now?
What year was that you ran and you were the very first African-American on the ballot in the entire history of the county?
That was Chester County. I ran for Democratic committee person, state committee person.
What year was that?
And then even to the fact that as an elected official there, to appoint my own people there, afterwards there, they usurped them and they want to put someone else in. They're going to usurp my own authority. This is constant behind it. But this is historic. This is historic how this area has been. How the minority is kept here. We have the mushroom, Tennis Square in that area. It's called the mushroom capital of the world. But now you're going to get into that dynamic. Now you're going to get into the labor dynamic. You're going to get to the job disparity. You're going to get to the education disparity. You're going to get to the housing.
But
disparity.
you know what? Here's the thing.
But they're trying to put 5 townships together. The law enforcement together.
But here's the thing with that. The thing with that is that all of those necessary conversations, those conversations that are absolutely necessary, they are never allowed to happen in a meaningful way, because whenever anything happens in this country, there's so much deflection that takes place. It's just above all else, let's not get to the core reasons that racism is still a problem. Let's not get to the core reasons that the police still racially profile and systemically target African Americans. Let's not get to the reasons. And it's always this song and dance that is, that is not endemic to just one political ideology. But you know what? In my view, it's overwhelmingly maintained by one. So if we don't ever get to the conversation that needs to be had, why is it, April, that we're still talking? And I think I'm answering the question as I ask it, obviously, but we're still talking about the same exact things that Malcolm, Martin, and James Baldwin were talking about. I could literally take footage and audio from there and mix it and make it sound like it's modern, and you would not be able to tell whether or not they were talking about 2015 or 1965.
That's right. Because there's so little progress on the level of racial justice. And a lot of it has to be, as you said, we're not having a conversation. White people refuse to hold the mirror up to themselves and see how they're wrong. And it's not just staunch conservatives either. I have so many people that hit me up on social media who consider themselves to be liberals or progressives or whatever label you want to use, but still have very backwards and harmful notions when it comes to race. So saying, well, I don't see color, or I'm colorblind, and why can't we all just love each other and all lives matter? Those are things that progressives say, so-called progressives anyway, but they are just as harmful as, the racists who at least let you know from the beginning that they don't like you and would rather have you off of this planet. It's hard to deal with both. And that's why we're not having the conversation, because even the progressives don't want to deal with their true feelings about people of color.
Absolutely. You hit that on the head. TJ, I want to thank you and Adrian for calling in from Don't Get It Twisted. We appreciate you guys. We want to open up the lines for some more callers. I see a couple of other callers here who want to participate. 857-600-0518. April, you hit that thing on the head. The sad reality is that it is more dangerous to have a so-called ally who denies the reality than it is to have a staunch person who just hates you tell you to your face that they don't like you. We don't have time. There is no more time, absolutely no time at all, for people who call themselves progressives or liberals or whatever they want to call themselves to patty cake around the issue. That's the only word that can come to mind right now. They're playing around the issue because in their heart, they don't believe that it really exists, because if they did, that would require them to look at themselves and see how they have been complicit with it all of this time. And so because our so-called allies, a lot of these towns, like what TJ was alluding to, his problem from what he was describing wasn't the Republican Party. His problem was in the Democratic Party. And the thing to me is, it's not so much a political ideology or political party as it is people who get in power and want to maintain power. And for the last, I almost said 50 years, but realistically, the last 400 years plus in this country, there has been a system in power that is only concerned with itself sustaining itself. Above all else, it wants to sustain itself, and it has used racism and white supremacy as a means to do so. And that is why to me, 50 years after Baldwin and 50 years after Malcolm and 50 years after Martin and years after Marcus Garvey and years after all of these people have been correctly diagnosing the disease, we are still dealing with the same exact thing, to the point, I don't know if you saw this, but to the point where they're still waving the Confederate flag in South Carolina at full staff. They won't even recognize that is part of the problem. They don't recognize the history of the white supremacy that is embedded in the Confederate flag, but it waves independent. It's not interwoven into the state flag like Florida or like other states. It waves independently. And we have an entire group of people, conservative and liberal or progressive, that just don't see anything wrong with that.
That's right. So we hear Governor Nikki Haley of South Carolina saying that, she's crying these tears of pain and anguish over the killings in Charleston, and yet she allows the Confederate flag to fly atop the State House. And so she lowered the flag, I believe, to half-mast to respect the fallen, and yet the flag is still a symbol of racism and oppression and must be taken down altogether. And I don't want to get into the flag because it's just a symbol, right? It's not, but it is yet another example of the tone deafness of the people in power, and the fact that they want to keep the status quo. And if the status quo means that they are, that Black people and people of color are going to continue to die, so that they can stay, not so that they can stay in power, but just so that nothing ever changes, so they really don't have to deal with the root of the problem, then unfortunately, as I think they would say, so be it.
And I mean, I don't know how many other ways we could slice it. I mean, we know clearly what the problem is. There's no ambiguity about it. We have known for years what the problem is. The problem is racism. It is white supremacy, but we also know that behind those two things, like you said, is the status quo. And the people who get in power, it's not always, it's not as though they become dependent on remaining in power because they know the limits to the amount of time that they can stay in power. But it's almost like when they get in office, these leaders become handmaidens of the status quo, and they become either actively pursuant of the status quo. I'm just making up stuff right now. Either they just actively go after maintaining the status quo and shoot down anything that could challenge it, or they become complacent and they become apathetic. I mean, there's so many politicians right now who are just useless in terms of moving our country forward. I would venture to say the majority, so many, too many. That's the right identifier. Too many people are completely useless with regard to moving our nation forward. And that's because either they have become a part of the status quo, or they're just apathetic and maybe they just feel like nothing can be done. But here we are. It might as well be 1964. It might as well be 1968. It might as well just be and the summer hasn't even begun. I mean, everybody remembers the summer of 1968, but the summer hasn't even begun. And I hope and pray that the summer is a peaceful summer. But it's just, we're hearkening back to days that we have not seen this intense level of just blatant racist hatred, white supremacy. I mean, we haven't seen it since then. And I think in part it's due because it's being exposed so much more because of social media. It's being exposed so much more. Not the incident last night. Last night would have been exposed anyway, but just in general, we are privy to what's been going on all along. It's not as though this went to sleep and it woke back up. I personally think that it's just been here all along, and we didn't see it in the media as much.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the saying is, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And so there is a sense of trying to keep the status quo at the expense of Black lives. And I do think that social media has played a fantastic hand in bringing these incidents to light, because they are not getting the coverage on mainstream media as they should. Even MSNBC, which is supposed to be the more liberal one of the mainstream networks, had their regular show on this morning, as opposed to cutting to Charleston, where this atrocity happened. And that's no surprise to many, but I'm not sure. We can't expect the media to cover these stories properly, unfortunately. And although we have now the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of the mid-60s, as I said before, and I'll say on this show, and I'll say again, I really feel like part of this is that these young Black men and women, and especially the Black men, are standing in proxy for our president. So we can say that there has been some progress because we have a Black president now, but we also, what appears to be a ramping up in violence against Black men. And for me, I think there just may be a connection to the fact that some of these racists and terrorists, let's call them thugs, let's call them what they are, can know that they cannot get to the president, but are so angry to see a Black the free world, and in charge of the entire country, that they can't take it. And so they are lashing out at someone in their community that represents the president to them.
And that's so clear. I mean, people could deny it as much as they want, but we saw this increase. We saw this increase immediately after, and I listen to a lot of people, and I've listened to some clips by Dr. Umar Johnson, and he actually said this before President Obama was elected in 2008. He predicted correctly that there would be an increase in violence against Black men and women, and that's what we've seen. Now, here, mentioning him, here's something I want to ask you, just to do a quick shift. People are frustrated. and rightfully so. People are angry, and rightfully so. And they absolutely have the right to feel the way that they feel. But what action? We seem to come down in three categories: those that just say pray, those that just say protest, and those that say pass the ammunition, if I can alliterate there. What action is actually going to get something done, in your opinion, April? What action, as I stall for 1 second to unmute you, what action can we take, in your opinion, to actually get something done?
I think it has to be all of those things and more, because we didn't add voting to that list, which I think can make a big difference. When we're talking about shaking up the status quo, it depends on who is in power. So prayer changes things. We know that, and I think that protest movements definitely have their place. And I believe, for me, their place is awareness. So I don't know that actual change, systemic change, is going to come from protest itself, but I think that the protests can lead to awareness of others, and move us in the right direction. And then pass the ammunition. Feminista Jones was speaking on Twitter today about perhaps a national day of people of color legally purchasing firearms, and exercising their Second Amendment right, as a show of, and I said that I might actually take part, even though I'm not a fan of guns at all. I may take part as a form of rebellion and defiance, and it's not that we are saying that we should engage in any type of war or even use those weapons, but how much do we think the gun control laws would change if 1 million people of color went on a specific day and purchased weapons?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what it is. It's voting and legislation. I think those are the things that are actually going to make the change. So that we need the proper legislation, and we need those in office to spur the legislation forward. So voting the right people in, and then pressuring them to legislate on behalf of Black lives that do matter.
So I have this complicated relationship with guns, only in the sense, politically speaking. I know that every gun that we buy actually empowers the NRA and therefore empowers the Republican Party and the conservative movement, and which to me represents the status quo. That's just my relationship with guns. However, you're right about something. You guys are absolutely right about this. I recall learning about Ronald Reagan when he was governor of California, quickly changed and passed or signed legislation outlawing the right to open carry back in the 60s, when the Black Panther Party showed them that, well, okay, we have the right to carry, so let's arm ourselves and let's defend our own neighborhoods. You're absolutely right in that. If African Americans around the country went and bought guns, we would see a very quick change in the tide in terms of gun control laws, because they honestly really believe that open carry, it's not written anywhere down on paper, but there is this understanding that guns are not for Black people. And I guarantee you, if we went out and did what Feminista Jones suggested, laws across the land would start to change. Open carry would start to disappear. Either that, now this is the complicated relationship I have with it. It's either that, or we just spend this money and empower the NRA and empower them more. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree that, it's a little problematic from that standpoint. And so we'll have to figure out how we can legally purchase firearms without necessarily giving even more power to the NRA, who, have they spoken out about this particular domestic terrorist? It seems that they don't do that very often. John Crawford was killed in Walmart for holding a fake gun in a Walmart, which is, I believe, an open carry state where he was killed.
Yes.
Has NRA spoken out about the fact that he should have been able to carry a gun, real or fake?
Right.
Tamir Rice, once again. So the NRA is conspicuously silent when we're talking about people of color owning or having firearms and, or dying at the hands of gun violence. But, they are all about their Second Amendment rights, and rightfully so, but it's definitely very selective. So, I think some thought needs to be given to exactly how we can accomplish this. See if there are, Black gun distributors that perhaps we could patronize or something like that. I don't know. We've got some time to think about it. But the overall idea, because I think that if we announce the specific date certain a year in advance, let's see how much gun control legislation is passed, nationally between that date in the future and on the day that we announce it, because people are afraid of, again, changing the status quo and putting guns in the rightful, lawful hands of people of color.
And you know what? I would be afraid too. I would be. I mean, consider what the implications. Because right now, open carry is really a white conservative male sport. That's what it is right now. And then imagine the time where it's no longer that, where you're going to be bumped in public. You're going to all of a sudden see hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of Black people walking around these open carry states with their weapons. That should terrify them, and that should quickly change the legislation, because a lot of people gave President Obama flack for mentioning and discussing this in light of gun laws. But I mean, to be truthful, this. Somebody said that, it's not about the gun. He could have done this amount of damage with a baseball bat. Bullshit, right? That's just straight. That's I can take somebody out with a baseball bat, but someone comes in with a gun. What are we going to do? And we've seen that even with at a gun show. They said the only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, hell, a bad guy with a gun went to a gun show over in Texas and killed I don't know how many people before they could have got their guns out. Right. And so I think it's holistic. We must address this top down. There is racism. There is white supremacy. And we need people to focus on that and that alone and attack that on a regular basis. And one person who does that on a regular basis is he's going to join us tomorrow. DeRay McKesson said that he can join us tomorrow. And we need people like that who can focus on that and solely that. And then we need people who can focus on the legal system. We need the attorneys. We need the attorneys who can get involved in the legal system and help out some of the situations that can only be remedied through legislation. We need people who are going to be in these churches and mobilizing the churches. Let's pray, but then let's move, and we need people to mobilize and rally all of us possible to vote out these people who are complacent. I don't care if they're Black. I don't care if they're Democrat. I don't care if they're Republican. I don't care who they are. If they are not serving the needs of your community and they are not changing the status quo that is leading to the death of so many people of color, they've got to go. They absolutely have got to go. April, I'll let the last word be with you, and then we're going to get out of here.
I think that's right. A lot has to change, and everybody really can play their part. Even if you are not one to march and rally, you can write a letter to, your national representative, your congressman, your senator, and tell them that they need to make changes. I believe that President Obama did the right thing about talking about gun control and legislation now, because when else are you going to have this conversation? He talked about it after Gabby Giffords was shot. He talked about it after Sandy Hook. And unfortunately, he keeps having to talk about it because nothing is being done. And I'm not sure that anything will be done, while he is president, but it's up to the next, and we can transition a little bit into 2016. It will be up to the next candidate, the next president of the United States, to take up this mantle of gun control and legislation, and let's see what they do with it. So I'd like to see, what their issue and your policy positions are with respect to gun control for all of the candidates, both Democrat and Republican.
Absolutely. And it's across the board. It's down the line. We must, if you're a person of faith, and not everybody is, but then if you are, pray, right? If you're not, then just think about it and meditate on it. If you're a person that is a protester, get out in the streets and protest. I mean, we need you out there. We need you to constantly bring attention to the problems. If you are a legal gun owner, then organize an open carry activist movement protest in your city with other legal gun owners and film it and put it on social media. That's something that if you are the type that really feels that you need to arm yourself, first of all, make sure that you're legal and that you can and get the correct licenses, and then I would advise you, just because of the nature of the beast, that you advise the police that you're going out to demonstrate, unless you are just that bold and you want to expose the hypocrisy of the police. In that case, all of us that are in church will be praying for you, because they absolutely see 12 black men walking down the streets with firearms. Something definitely might pop off. And that's, we laugh about that, April, but that's the reality that we're challenged with. That is the challenge, that 5 black men who are legally licensed to carry weapons walking down the street have to fear for their life, whereas 5 white men with the same exact licenses don't have to fear for their life. And I know I went off on a tangent, but I'm just going down the list. It's both, and it's all of the above. We must do it all. And so I'm not going to, don't downplay someone who does their part through social media activism, because they're doing their part. Don't downplay somebody who is, and I know I said I was going to give you the last word, and I'm just here running my mouth, April, but you set it up so properly and so true. Everyone do your part. And if your part is to go buy a gun and go demonstrate with that weapon legally, then go do that. And then if your part, but all of us, all of the above, our part is to vote, and we have to vote out these people who are complacent. I don't care if they've been your Democratic representative in a certain district in Florida that I come from and hasn't done anything for that district. I don't care how much you love them. If they have not done anything to change the status quo, vote that mayor out, vote that governor out, vote that congressman out, and then make sure that we get the right president in the White House, and make sure that they are beholden to our needs as people of color, but then human beings in general, because what starts in the black community is always going to spill out to your community. April, thank you so much for joining me. I've got to get out of here, and I know you've got to get out of here. We've already done over an hour, and I just want to thank you for your time, and make sure you reserve some time for me tomorrow when I have DeRay McKesson, and I'm going to try to get Dr. Boyce Watkins on the line.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure. Everyone, thank you so much. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We will join you tomorrow at our regular time, and then we'll probably do a special episode in the afternoon when everyone is available to discuss these matters further. And we want you to be a part of it. 857-600-0518. That number does not change, so jot it down. Thank you for everyone who's watching via YouTube and everyone who's listening via Spreaker and on the radio. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time.
That moment comes when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other. That I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.